Hello everybody, and welcome back to another video. In today's video, we'll be taking a look at my final prediction for the 2022 Georgia Senate runoff election between Raphael Warnock and Herschel Walker. If you've been following the channel for a while, I think you'll know how we're going to do this. We're going to look at some numbers here and make a prediction off of these numbers and, talk all about this race where I think it's going to end up tomorrow. If you're new to the channel, welcome. I'm glad this video came across your feed, or if you search for it, good for you, because we're going to give you a data-based approach to this predicting this runoff election. So the first thing I want to talk about is just some general rules of thumb for runoffs, because I think it's really important to make the distinction between a runoff election and a midterm election or a presidential election, right? So to really get the feel for a runoff electorate, we have to talk about past runoffs, okay? So in past runoff elections, the share, as a percentage, white versus black has been inconsistent. And, in 2008, the black percentage went down, but in last year's runoff, 2021, it went up. So that's inconsistent. But what is consistent is the white turnout, and specifically within white voters. So in general elections, and to an extent midterm elections, the white vote tends to be a bit more uneducated, meaning not having a college degree. But in a runoff, a lot of the voters that don't have college degrees are less likely to pay attention to, elections. They're less likely to know there's a runoff. They're less likely to care about a runoff than, say, a college-educated voter in the suburbs, which is where most college-educated voters tend to live, right? And so what that does is that means that as a share of the electorate, again, turnout goes down everywhere in a runoff because less people, frankly, care about runoffs than they do about presidential races, right? So every county you'll look at, turnout will be down when you compare it to a presidential or midterm election, right? But turnout falls more in rural white areas that tend to be not as college educated than it will fall in, say, an urban area or a suburban, more educated area. And that's mostly because, again, like I said, voters with college degrees are more likely to know there's a runoff, more likely to be educated about the situation, more likely to, say, oh, I'm going to turn out to vote today. And that's why you get lower turnout all across the board, but the counties with educated populations will make up a higher percentage of the electorate, right? And so that's the most important thing to understand about runoff. If there's one thing you take away from this video, it's that the share of voters that hold college degrees will go up. And again, that isn't, I've said this before and I'll say it again, that isn't because people are randomly getting college degrees in the middle of November. It's because it's because the people that are turning out will have college degrees, and the people that don't turn out are less likely to have college degrees. That's why it is. Now, what does that tell us about how they're going to vote? Well, if you look at the Georgia exit polls from November, and again, I do want to just pull this up just so we can, show it on your screen. Voters that graduated college made up about 40% of the electorate. That'll probably go up, like I said. And they actually they backed Warnock by about 7 points, while voters without a college degree backed Walker by about 6. So kind of a mirror image there where non-college educated voters did not, or backed Walker, while college graduates backed Warnock by pretty similar amounts. And so you'll notice that, again, the higher the higher the percentage of the electorate this makes up, probably the better for Warnock, because again, that's a group that he needs to do well with, that he would benefit from having turn out more. So that is essentially why. By the way, that's why Democrats won the runoff last time, because rural white voters from these super Republican areas up north and down south of the state that aren't pretty far away from Atlanta and other metropolitan areas. Those areas obviously still voted in the runoff, but they voted at lower rates than, say, Gwinnett County or Cherokee County or Cobb County, which are more educated counties in Georgia. And so that is the most important thing to understand. Now, the second most important thing to understand about midterms is, and I briefly alluded to this at the beginning of the video, black turnout. The best way to forecast any Georgia election is by looking at the black share of the electorate. And so what does that mean? Well, that means out of every 100 voters, how many of them are black? And so right now, that's just under 32. Again, it's percentages, it's decimals, obviously 31.8. But you get, I'm sure you guys can do rounding in your head. That's 32%. 32 out of every 100 voters right now are black. Now, where was that in November? Let's take a look at race in this exit poll. It was 28% in November. So that's a 4% increase. And that may not seem like a lot. That might be like, okay, 4% statewide. What does that mean? Well, in a state like Georgia, which again was very, very close in November, and chance it will be very, very close again, that means a lot. And if you look at elections where Democrats have done well versus where they've done poorly, you will see that it really matters. Because, for example, in the 2020 election, black voters made up 29% of the electorate, and Biden won it by about 0.3%. But in the runoff, in January of that year, 2 months later, black turnout rose by 1.5%. So they made up at 30.5%. And Warnock won by a little over 1.5% more than Biden. He won by, a little under 2. So again, not exact. He did 1.7% better. But again, black turnout rose by 1.5%. So, pretty clear correlation there, right? And again, like I said, in the runoff in January 2021, the black share of the electorate was 30.5%. Now, right now, it's 31.8%. So, first of all, it's 1.3% higher. And secondly, the white share of the electorate is actually down a bit. It was 56% or 57% in 2021. Right now, it's 55%. And that's mostly because Asian voters and Hispanic voters, I think, have grown as a share of the electorate as well as others. But yeah. But again, the black turnout is really what matters at this point. And again, when you have, elections like where even in November, black turnout was actually lower than expected. It was expected to be around 30%. It ended up being 28%. And that, had you told me before the election that it would only be 28%, I would have thought, okay, well, Walker's, probably the narrow favorite in that race. But again, he ended up losing the vote, and he's going to head to a runoff here. But anyways, that's beside the point, where obviously that happened a month ago. Can't really litigate that now. But what I will say is that I think it's good to set barometers if the and again, actually, before I do that, I do want to talk about some early vote versus election day vote. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut myself off there, but I do want to talk about this. So again, the election day vote is obviously be more Republican. We know those people who vote on the day of are tend to be more Republican leaning. People who vote early tend to be more Democratic leaning. I think we all understand that concept pretty easily. But again, what that means is that because in Georgia, black voters are, very, very likely to be Democrats. Again, 90% of them voted for Warnock. That means that if you assume, which I'm making that assumption, you can disagree, but this is my assumption, that since election day turnout will at least to some extent be more Republican than the early vote, the black share will fall. Will it be by, 4% to get it back down to 28? Probably not. But it'll probably be by maybe half a point, maybe 0.7%, maybe a full point if election day turnout's a bit higher than I'm expecting, right? But either way, like even if you think it falls a full point, it's still about a little higher than where it was when Warnock last won. And by the way, white voters have shifted left since then. Warnock did better with white voters, as you can see in this exit poll, than Biden, right? So he got 29%. Walker got 70%. Biden got a similar amount, I think. And again, white voters made up a lower share of the electorate in 2020, which is why Biden didn't. This election saw Warnock win by more than Biden, but presidential elections don't have runoffs, so that's kind of why Biden got it easier than Warnock did, but that's beside the point here. So that I think is important to understand. The election day turnout being more white and more Republican leaning than the early vote will likely bring this number down from 32%, maybe 31.5 or 31 on the dot. But again, it doesn't really matter because it's still unless it falls below 30.5, it's probably still really good for Warnock because it's outpacing the time he last won. And, he already won by 2% that year. So he already has a big enough cushion, I think you could say. Now, let's take a look just briefly here at gender turnout data because, we talked about college degrees. We talked about, the black versus the white vote. Let's take a look at gender. And again, I don't love to do this because I think gender can be a bit misleading in terms of voting. But right now, women, and I just noticed this, women are at 56% of the vote. And in the November election, women were at, let me pull it up here, they were at 53% of the vote. And so, again, if you assume that the election day turnout will be more Republican, thus more masculine, you're probably right. It'll probably go down to maybe 55 or 55.5, but it's still way higher than it was in November. And again, women broke for Warnock by 8, while men broke against him by 10. So the more women vote as a share of the electorate, the better for Warnock. The more black voters vote as a share of the electorate, the better for Warnock. The more college-educated voters vote, the better for Warnock. And what are we seeing? We are seeing that voters, with college degrees are turning out more. That's always been the case in runoffs, but specifically this year, black voters and women are turning out more. So Warnock has gone 3-0 in those ballparks. And that is why I think at this point you can call him a pretty comfortable favorite to win the runoff. Now, does that mean it's over? Certainly not. Herschel Walker can win with a high election day turnout, but the thing is, if you look at the energy that his campaign has, like I said, he's getting, first of all, when you look at the spending on TV, he's getting outspent nearly 3-1. So I think that says that Democrats are a bit more confident, are more confident spending money in Georgia than Republicans are. And additionally, the turnout reports from Republican areas are just not where they need to be. If you look at I won't do it right now because it would take too long, but if you look at Go to georgiavotes.com, by the way, georgiavotes.com. And if you look at the data, right, on these early votes, right, the counties that are turning, or the districts that are turning out less are Republican ones. The districts that are turning out more are Democratic ones. Now, Republicans could solve that on election day if they get a high turnout. But again, not the most likely outcome, especially when in November they also got a high election day turnout, and they still, Walker still lost this race by, 38,000 votes. So, with that out of the way, I do want to make my final county prediction here because I, don't want to keep you too long. Let's show you the prediction. So, I think Warnock's going to win. I don't know exactly by how much it'll be by. Again, I have him winning by 3.2, but that, certainly comes with a margin of error. But like my overall claim and my prediction and my belief here is that I would be pretty surprised if Walker were to win. And that isn't to say that he doesn't have a path that he can't win, but like when you look at the data, black turnout's up 4% from where it was last month. And again, Warnock still got more votes last month. So he's, Walker's already in a hole, and that hole got 4 times bigger for him. Or sorry, I should say 4% bigger. And additionally, when you look at the runoff, and this is my big thing about runoffs, because the share of white voters with college degrees goes up as a share of that white vote, that means that Republicans are going to net less votes out of the white proportion, right, statewide. Because obviously, if you look at the exit polls, Walker's going to win white voters by a lot, right? White voters in Georgia are very conservative overall, but he needs to win them by even more than this to win. And when white voters get more educated in the runoff, that makes it harder for him to net those big margins. Because again, voters with college degrees broke for Warnock over Walker. So that's why I think a lot of those paths are kind of foreclosed. Again, he would need a big election day turnout out of these rural voters up here that aren't turning out as much or historically haven't turned out as much in order for him to win. And yeah, it's like I've said, it's possible, but it just is not, something I'd bet on happening because historically there's no precedent for it happening to begin with. So I guess I'll take you through this map here. As you can see, this is Atlanta. These two big counties right here. This is Fulton. That's DeKalb. Those are, some pretty Democratic leaning counties, obviously, where Atlanta is. And, in November, they broke for Warnock 75-25 and 84-14. And then, this is Gwinnett. That's a blue suburb. You've got, that's Cobb. That's Henry. I believe that's Newton. Let's see if I got those all right. Yeah, I did get those right. I'm proud of myself. And then the interesting thing here is Fayette, because Fayette in November voted for for Walker by about, 2,000 votes. I think it narrowly flips probably, 2 or 3 points, something like that. But, it's my sleeper pick. A lot of people think it's going to stay red, but I think it'll go blue. And then, these are the more rural black communities. Again, this right here, that's Augusta. That, this is Muskogee, and that is where Columbus is. I can't believe I forgot that. But yeah, these two blue counties are pretty important for Warnock. Again, in 2020, he voted, or in November, he netted 15,000 votes there, and 24,000 votes there. So he needs to net some votes out of there. I think he will. And then these rural counties like here that are more black as a percentage, those are probably going to vote for Warnock. But again, they'll be fairly close. And then you go down here. These are again some rural black counties that have historically leaned Democratic. And then finally, you make your way out to the coast. That's Chatham County. That's where Savannah is. It's essentially Warnock's hometown. I think he carries Chatham by probably 20 or 22 or 23 points, something in that ballpark, low 20s. And yeah, now that's the coalition, I think, for the victory. Walker to win statewide, he need to, flip Fayette, to run these margins down some of these suburbs. Because again, he lost Gwinnett by 20, he lost Newton by 16, and he lost Henry by 30. Henry's probably long gone, but he'd have to, lose Gwinnett by 15, lose Cobb by 14, and come within 13 or 12 of winning Newton to win statewide. Because again, these are blue leading counties, and they're going to be turning out even higher than they were in November. And so that's why it's just such a big obstacle for Herschel Walker to win. So that's my prediction. Again, if I'm wrong, you can come back to this video. You can, tell me why I was wrong. I was right about the midterms, so I haven't gotten those comments, but maybe I will this time. But anyways, thanks for watching again. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe if you haven't already. Again, tell me your prediction. We're going to see who is most accurate tomorrow morning. And yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye, guys.